Good afternoon. It is a cold and dreary kind of Sunday here in Texas. You just never know from one day to the next if it's going to be hot or cold here. It's kind of frustrating, but it is what it is. We are going to do Acts 23 today. If you want to grab your Bibles, I'll be reading out of the King James Version. And we're going to get started. And Paul, earnestly beholding the council, said, Men and brethren, I have lived in all good conscience before God until this day. And the high priest Ananias commanded them that stood by him to smite him on the mouth. Then said Paul unto him, God shall smite thee, thou whited wall. For sittest thou to judge me after the law, and commandest me to be smitten contrary to the law? Now what Paul means here was that Ananias was a high priest that was, and he was considering himself, he had a white veneer of purity covering over his obvious corruption. And the priest in this day was not allowed to be the administrator of the law, but he was actually supposed to be the example of the law, not to administer it, but just uphold it and show others how to be. His command to have Paul struck was in fact contrary to both the spirit and the law. Deuteronomy 25:1-2 says, only a man found guilty can be beaten. And Paul hadn't been found guilty of anything. Okay, verse 4. And they that stood by said, Revelest thou God's high priest? Then said Paul, I wist not, brethren, that he was the high priest, for it is written, Thou shalt not speak evil of the ruler of thy people. But when Paul perceived that the one part was Sadducees and the other Pharisees, he cried out in the council, Men and brethren, I am a Pharisee, the son of a Pharisee. Of the hope and resurrection of the dead I am called in question. And when he had said, there arose a dissension between the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and the multitude was divided. For the Sadducees say that there is no resurrection, neither angel nor spirit, nor the Pharisees confess, but the Pharisees confess both. And there arose a great cry, and the scribes that were of the Pharisee part arose and strove, saying, We find no evil in this man, but if a spirit or an angel has spoken to him, let us not fight against God. So the Sadducees were like the religious liberals of their day, and they deny the reality of life after death and the concept of the resurrection completely. Where the Pharisees were the fundamentalists of their day. They took the Bible very seriously. They followed the law. Typically, the Sadducees and Pharisees were very much enemies against each other, but they definitely united in the opposition against Jesus. They both did not like Jesus, and so they were at least united on that front. Verse 10. And when there rose a great dissension of chief captain, fearing lest Paul should have been pulled in pieces of them, commanded the soldiers to go down and to take him by force from among them, and to bring him unto the castle. And the night following, the Lord stood by him and said, Be of good cheer, Paul, for as thou hast testified of me in Jerusalem, so must thou bear witness also at Rome. So Jesus came to him while he was in prison and said to Paul, be of good cheer. And Paul, obviously, he needed to hear those words at that point. He needed to have that blessing over him as far as that's concerned. Anyone can be of good cheer when everything is just, great and dandy. Anybody can be thankful and happy when everything's going their way. But what about when things are not going your way? And like Paul, who was, accused of things, and they're wanting to kill him for it. How do you be in good cheer when that's going on? But we are always to be of good cheer, and we're always to worship him no matter what. We worship him in the storm. We praise him. We should always be happy and in of good cheer. But when our trials are coming, that's when it's really the test for us as Christians. That's when we really have to, step out on faith and be of good cheer during those times and worship Him anyway. And that's when it's the hardest. That's when our faith really has to just shine through everything that's going on. We know that God knows exactly what's going on. We just have to trust Him in what His plan is. He knows the outcome. We don't, but we have to trust Him. Okay, verse 12. And when it was day, certain of the Jews banded together and bound themselves under a curse, saying that they would neither eat nor drink till they had killed Paul. And they were more than 40 which had made this conspiracy. And they came to the chief priests and elders and said, We have bound ourselves under a great curse, that we will eat nothing until we have slain Paul. Now therefore ye with the council signify to the chief captain that he bring him down unto you tomorrow, as though ye would inquire something more perfectly concerning him. And we, or ever he come near, are ready to kill him. So there were 40 men that vowed to fast until they killed Paul. They weren't going to eat or drink anything until they had the opportunity to kill him. This is obviously very different than the kind of fast that we think of as Christians nowadays when we say we're going to go on a fast. We do it to get close to God, to humble ourselves, to get strength in our faith. We don't do it, to get our way, because to me that's kind of what's going on. They're trying to get their way. We do it so that we can grow in Jesus, and that's what fasting is about. And right now the church has been called to fast. Many people at Fear No Evil Ministries are doing a fast, me as well. Just as a way to bring blessings and to grow in Him. And that's something that as a Christian, you should pray about and see if God leads you to some kind of a fast, to see if it'll bring you closer to God and build your faith with Him. And you might be surprised. It's kind of hard to do fasts sometimes, but you might be surprised what happens and what kind of blessings are bestowed upon you for having that kind of faith. Verse 16. And when Paul's sister's son heard of their lying in wait, he went and entered into the castle and told Paul. Then Paul called one of the centurions unto him, and said, Bring this young man unto the chief captain, for he hath a certain thing to tell him. So he took him and brought him to the chief captain, and said, Paul the prisoner called me unto him, and prayed me to bring this young man unto thee, who has something to say unto thee. Then the chief captain took him by the hand, and went with him aside privately, and asked him, What is it that thou hast to tell me? And he said, The Jews have agreed to desire thee that thou wouldest bring down Paul tomorrow unto the council, as they would inquire somewhat of him more perfectly. But do not yield unto them, for there lie in wait for him of them more than 40 men, which have bound themselves with an oath, that they will neither eat nor drink till they have killed him. And now are they ready, looking for a promise from thee. So the chief captain then let the young man depart, and charged him, See thou know no man that thou hast shewest these things to me. That is the biggest problem I have with King James Version, is all these thous and these and shewest and these strange words that just don't make sense to me. And that is why I have a hard time understanding King James Version. I usually have to read another version alongside of it so that I can kind of get what they're saying. But I know that the King James Version is the closest version we have to the actual versions that were translated over from Hebrew and Greek. And so I continue to do the King James Version, so that when I do have a word that I'm just not really sure, because sometimes the words don't exactly mean what we think they mean, I can look it up in the Strong's Concordance. And I've used that book many a times. I urge you, if you are reading King James, or if you're not reading King James, to be sure and get a King James. But if you have a King James, to get a Strong's Concordance, because it can help you really understand exactly what the Bible is trying to say and what the words mean. Because sometimes some words don't mean the exact same thing that we perceive them to mean in our language. Okay, so what I just read, I kind of got off on the King James Version, sorry. But what I just read, really just showed that in these circumstances, that God's protective hand was really, over Paul. He sent somebody to warn them not to let Paul go down to where the Gentiles were at to where the Jews were at, because they were wanting to kill him. And so, the jailer, he took that to heart, and he wasn't going to allow that to happen because, Paul had not been found guilty of anything. All right, 23. And he called unto him 2 centurions, saying, Make ready 200 soldiers to go to Caesarea, and horsemen 70, and spearmen 200 at the 3rd hour of the night. And provide them beasts that they may set Paul on and bring him safe unto Felix the governor. So here they're planning on taking Paul. I'm assuming the 3rd hour of the night would be 3 a.m., which, they're leaving in the dark of the night when nobody's going to know that they're leaving. So they're basically sneaking him out of there. And he wrote a letter after this manner: Claudius Lysias unto the most excellent governor Felix sendeth greeting. This man was taken of the Jews, and should have been killed of them. Then came I with an army and rescued him, having understood that he was a Roman. And when I would have known the cause, therefore they accused him, I brought him forth unto their council, whom I perceived to be accused of questions of their law, but to have nothing laid to the charge worthy of death or of bonds. And when it was told to me that the Jews laid wait for the man, I sent straightway to thee, and gave commandment to the accusers also to say before thee that what they had against him, farewell. Then the soldiers, as it was commanded them, took Paul and brought him by night to Antipatris. On the morrow they left the horsemen to go with him, and returned to the castle, whom, when they came to Caesarea and delivered the epistle to the governor, presented Paul also before him. So the letter that was sent with Paul stated that they learned he was a Roman, and that he had nothing charged against him, and that he was not found guilty of anything. So it's interesting that, if they found all this, why they just didn't let Paul go, but they didn't. 34. And when the governor had read the letter, he asked of what province he was. And when he understood that he was of Cilicia, I will hear thee, said he, when thine accusers are also come. And he commanded him to be kept in Herod's judgment hall. So now Paul is awaiting his trial in Caesarea. And, we have to wonder what exactly Paul is thinking right now. How is his heart feeling? Is his heart, is he afraid? Is he discouraged? Is he in good cheer? Like Jesus came and told him to be of good cheer? Was he just standing in faith and trusting that God had this, and he knew exactly what was going to happen? I've got to wonder if Paul was thinking, well, I was warned over and over not to go, and I did. If he knew that his time was, ending, or did he think, God was going to rescue him from this? There's really no real answer as to what, Paul might have been thinking, but I believe that he probably had complete faith, and he knew that what he had done was what he was supposed to do, and that if it was his time, that he was ready. And I don't really know, but that's just kind of my thoughts. So anyway, that is Acts 23. We'll be doing Acts 24 soon. We're getting close to the end of Acts, so if anybody has any thoughts on what they want to do next, just let me know, and we'll get busy on it. I will say this, I didn't really know a lot of the story of Acts when I started this, but I've learned a lot, and I don't know if anybody else has learned a lot, but it's been a blessing to me. So I hope it's been a blessing to at least somebody out there. Anyway, I hope everybody has a really wonderful and blessed week, and I will see you guys soon. Love you.